Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. We're going to talk about functions and specifically relating them to the usage of flowcharts to help us design how our program will flow from a top-level view. And flowcharts are perfect for that. And I love this Visio program because it allows me to figure out the idea of how we're going to solve our program, the logic or the flow of this. So as you can see over here, we've got some things to do, and then over here we are going to call a function. And so we know that this is a call to a function because we've got the two vertical lines over here and over here in this rectangle. That means call a function. In this case, we are going to display multiples of 5. So we're asking the user, how many multiples of 5s do you want to display? And then this function will display it. So if I go to page 2, here are the details of how we are going to be displaying these multiples of 5s. So let's go back over here to Visual Studio and create a project. So we're going to say New Project and Windows Forms Application. That's good. This is going to be a C# program, and we're dealing with functions and specifically with flowcharts. And let's say chart. Here we go. And let's say that the name of this program is multiples of 5. Okay, so once this loads up, let's go open up the toolbox, and I'm going to drag and drop a button and a label and also a text box. And I'm going to select all three of these, and I'm going to go over here to the Properties panel and make sure that they all have a font size of 12. So I'll click on Font, and let's change that to 12. So I type in 12, press Enter. Good. Now I'm going to move the label to the upper left-hand corner, and in accordance to the flowchart, we're supposed to say what? How many multiples of 5s do you want to display? Okay, so how many multiples of 5 do you want to display? Question mark. Okay. Let's open up the form a little bit so we can accommodate the long sentence here. And then at the very end, we're going to put the text box like this. Let's go ahead and arrange the button underneath it. And I'll make it a little bit taller, something like this. That's going to be our submit button, so we'll type in submit for the text property. I'll take this label, copy and paste it, and I want to be able to resize it, which means I'm going to have to change the auto size to false. The border style will put a single border style around it. So now I'm just simply going to resize the label. That looks pretty good right there. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'll have to resize the form. I want to get rid of the minimize and the maximize box, so double click. There we go. And instead of Form 1, let's change that font, or the font rather, the text, to displaying multiples of 5. Looks pretty good. All right, let's give names to the various items. So over here, the name property for this will be txt user num. This is the submit button, so we'll say btn rather, submit. And then finally, this is the label. By the way, I don't want that label to have any text in it, and I don't like the orientation, so the text align will make that middle center. And then in terms of the text, let's get rid of the text. Okay, good. So I named this txt user num, this guy btn submit, perfect. And then finally the name for this will be lbl result. Okay, save your work, double click on the button so that you can go into the code area. I don't need the text, the toolbox, I don't need properties. Now I am going to create the function that's displayed over here on the flowchart, and let me zoom in just a little bit here, and it looks like the name of this function is show multiple, I should say multiples, but that's alright, show multiple of 5s. Okay, so this is a void function because there's nothing to be returned, and it looks like it has a parameter that's being sent to it. It looks like it's a whole number, and we're going to call that user number parameter. Okay, so first of all, show multiple of 5s. Okay, switch back over here. we're going to create a void function, show multiple of 5s, and open and close parentheses. And we're going to put the open and close curly braces, but this thing has an argument. It looks like it's supposed to be an integer, and we're going to call it user number parameter. Okay, so an integer user num parameter. All right, inside of this function, what am I supposed to do? Well, it looks like I'm declaring some stuff, counter and also multiple, and it looks like they're both going to be whole numbers, so that means integer. Counter is going to be set to 0, multiple is going to be set to 5. So let's start off with counter, int counter, and we'll set that to 0. So int counter, and we'll set that to 0. The next item is multiple. That's going to be an integer, and we'll set it to 5. So int multiple, and we'll set it to 5. Now these are declarations, and so I'll put a comment over here. Now, were you told to put a comment here? No. Declarations. You were not told to put a comment here. I'm just doing it because I think it's good programming practice. So just because someone didn't tell you to do it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do it, to kind of section off what it is that you're going to be doing inside of your program. All right, what's the next step in our flowchart? So it looks like we've bumped into a diamond, and so the question that you have to ask is this an if statement or is this a while statement? I think this is going to be a while statement because check this out. If I go down, it comes right back into the top of the top of this diamond, indicating that there's a loop. You can see the pattern that I'm making on the screen. So this is a repetition structure. We'll use the while statement while the counter is less than user number par. So while the counter is less than user number parameter. Oh man, I misspelled that. That's supposed to be a capital P. So let me just change that now, otherwise it'll bother me for the rest of the program. User number parameter. So capital P, there we go. And I'm going to put an open and close curly braces for this while statement. And what are we supposed to do inside here? Well, once you're inside the while statement, that is, once it's true, then you're supposed to, let's see, it says print, which means we're going to output something. That's what that rhombus means. You're either reading or you're writing. And so in this case, we're writing or printing something to the output. It says print multiple and a space. Okay, so the only way to do that is to display something on this label right here. So that means that LBL result.text, we are going to take the old value of the label. We're going to concatenate that with what? With multiple and then a space. Okay, so I better convert dot to string whatever the value of multiple is, and then I'm also going to concatenate that with a space. So I already know offhand that I'm going to have to convert this to a string. Why? Because this is an integer, and I don't want to concatenate an integer with a string. You can't. You're going to have to convert it into a string and then go from there. Well, I guess I could have done this also. Let me just show you this approach. I think I can do this. Let me see, maybe I'm wrong. Multiple dot to string. Yeah, that's another way of doing this, right? So you're converting this to a string by using the toString method. It does the same thing. Let's see here, going back to the flowchart. The next thing I'm supposed to do is to increment the counter. Okay, so the counter plus equals 1. I haven't been doing it that way for the previous videos, but that's okay. This is a shortcut way of saying increment the counter by 1. And it looks like in terms of multiple, you're supposed to increment it by 5. So for multiple, we're going to plus equals 5, which means take the multiple and we're going to assign it to multiple plus 5. So it's a shortcut method of incrementing it by 5. If you want to use the old approach, that's fine too. All right, once we're finished with this statement, we go back to the while statement and ask if we're going to do this again and again and again. And finally, when we're done, we're at the end of the function. So that's it for this function. Let me save my work and scroll up a little bit over here to the main program, which is over here when we click the submit button. So back over here at page 1, it says, scroll up a little bit here, declare user input as a whole number. Okay, so over here, declarations, int user input. Right, that's what this is, user input. It's a whole number, so I put the word int here. All right, next, clear the output. Okay, so clear the output means take that label dot text and set it to nothing. That way the output has been cleared. Next, print how many multiples of 5s do you want to display. Well, we've done that already via this label. This label is printing out to the user how many multiples of 5s do you want to display. Okay, so we've taken care of that. The next thing to do, here's a rhombus shape, which means you're either reading or you're writing. And in this case, we're going to read what the user input is. So we've got to get the user input. Well, what that means is we've got to get the user input from this text box in the context of this visual CSharp program. All right, so I'll just say get user input. And that means that user input is going to be assigned. First of all, let me convert whatever is inside of that text box. So we'll say convert dot to int32, whatever is inside of the text box, dot text. Get the text from the text box, convert it into a whole number, and then place it into user input, which is also, by the way, a whole number. Okay, so once we've done that, now we call a function called show multiples of 5s. Okay, so basically what we're doing over here is we're going to perform a calculation and output via a call to a function, which is called show multiples of 5. Show multiple of 5s. What do you need to do your job? Well, it looks like you need a whole number, and by the way, the kind of whole number that you're supposed to send to me has something to do with the user number. Well, I do have that. It's called user input. So I'll give you user input so that you can do your job of showing multiples of 5s. All right, so that's it for our program. We've finished everything in our flowchart. Let's save our work and run the program and see if we are actually displaying multiples of 5s. So let me see 3 multiples of 5s. So 5, 10, 15. Good. I want to see 10 multiples of 5s. So let me click this button. First of all, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. And let's see if they're in fact all multiples of 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Yep, looks like it works. So whatever I enter into the text box, it's going to clear the label down here, and then it's going to display all the multiples of 5s starting from the number 5. All right, so what this does is it takes advantage of this function, and the function in this case is not returning anything. It receives one parameter, and then it does its work, and we're using a while statement to basically just display all the multiples of 5s. And that is it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.